Everybody got it. I appreciate everybody giving me the opportunity to come in and speak about this important topic, which is hate and bias motivated incidents. I'm not really sure how you want the translation to go. I'll do my best to stop and then let you translate and then continue if that works for you.
Sure.
Okay.
大家晚上好，非常有幸受到红叶文化协会的邀请，来给大家做一个讲座，关于歧视以及偏见引起的事件，以及在霍顿如何报警。
Awesome. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to, speak tonight about what the current, legislation and the laws look like in this country. I'm going to speak a little bit about our police services response to hate. And then, most importantly, what you can do as members of the community to support those that are impacted.
首先，我要给大家介绍一下加拿大各级政府的关于这个仇恨事件的法律相关法律，以及在霍顿郡我们是如何让安全的处理这些问题。大家关心的话题呢，也可以在结束的时候提问。
Great. I'm going to, I think I can share my screen. Just give me a second. Can everybody see that? Can you see that PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's working for everybody?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, great. So I'm going to speak about hate crimes and hate incidents. What I can tell you is that this is one of our police services top priorities. And it's one of our top priorities because we recognize that these types of incidents have a ripple effect across communities, in the whole country and otherwise. And very different than maybe something that would involve, a theft of your vehicle or a bike that would impact one person. These impact whole communities. And when somebody's victimized by hate, it's an attack on those from identified groups or those from specific communities, which is why we as a police service have to take these things seriously and have a very strategic approach.
首先先讲一下这个背景哈，就是对于警局来说，由于种族偏见引起的这个暴力事件，对他们来说是非常重要的，因为这样的事件不仅仅是针对一个个人的，一般它的影响会影响到整个社区。比如说有人偷了车，或者是这种事件呢，只是针对一个人一个事件发生的，但是由于针对一个人的种族而发生的这个仇恨事件，却会影响到整个社区，所以这是一个非常非常重要的话题。
So really, a question we get a lot is, what is a hate crime? And, in the most simplistic terms, a hate crime is any criminal offense that's committed against a person or property, which is motivated in whole or in part by hate, bias, or prejudice. And it's important to know that within our criminal code, which is our laws of the land, there is no such thing as an actual hate crime. There's hate legislation or hate propaganda legislation, which I'll speak to. But it's important to know that any criminal offense, if it's motivated in whole or in part by hate, bias, or prejudice, can be classified as a hate crime.
OK， 现在首先定义一下什么是这个由于种族歧视引起的犯罪，就是按照加拿大的法律呢，没有一个种族歧视罪这种定义，但是任何一个事件是由于全部还是部分是由于对某一个种族或者某一个种族由于有偏见产生的犯罪，都可以归类为这个仇恨犯罪。
So for something to be classified as a hate crime or a hate incident, and I'll speak about the difference of those two things, it has to target an identifiable group, and that's listed within the criminal code and within our legislation. And that distinguishes members of the public by those things that you see: color, race, religion, ethnic origin, age, sex. I'll let you read those things. But it has to target somebody based on that or those factors or any similar factor. So what that means is, though, if somebody who's committing an act of hate perceives somebody to be from one of those identifiable groups, even if they're not from one of those identifiable groups, it can still be categorized as a hate crime or a hate incident.
如何定义是由于这个仇恨引起的这个犯罪行为呢？他是说一定是要由于某一个偏见，或者是想象中的某一个偏见造成的。关于什么的偏见呢？关于你的肤色、种族、宗教、你的这个你的那个就是你的国籍的，或者是某一种人种的猜测，还有关于你的年龄的歧视、性别的歧视，以及性取向的歧视，以及这个性别取向的歧视，或者是关于这个身体上有残疾，还是大脑，还是说精神有残疾，根据这些个元素，只要是由于根据某一个元素，或者是他心中偏见的某一个元素造成的这种犯罪事件，都可以算作由偏见引起的犯罪行为。
So some examples of what might constitute a hate crime: it can be physical assaults, verbal threats, damage to property, graffiti or vandalism. And, I'll use an example, and it's not meant to offend anybody. It's just an example for this presentation. It could be a swastika painted on a synagogue, or, hate speech painted on a building, and hate propaganda, which I'll speak to in a few seconds. But those are some examples. But it's important to remember that any offense, any criminal offense, as long as it's motivated by hate, bias, or prejudice, can meet the definition of what we would call a hate crime.
举一些例子哈，就是由于偏见引起的这个仇恨犯罪，比如说physical 就是打人，或者是骂人，或者是把这个别人的这个物业有损坏，有的呢是在墙上喷这个涂鸦，还有的有一些是这个充满仇恨的宣传，这些都是一些个仇恨犯罪的例子。
Great. So I'm going to speak a little bit about there's 5 sections within the criminal code that specifically speak to hate, and it's our hate propaganda legislation. So again, these are the things that are specifically that speak to hate. The first offense is advocating or promoting genocide. And what I'll probably have you do is just translate what that means. But it means, any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part an identifiable group. And when we think about advocating or promoting genocide, think about, Rwanda, think about the Holocaust. What I can tell you is that we often don't see this charge laid in Canada. As you can imagine, more so applicable in other countries that may not even have this law, but we don't lay this charge often. We don't see it very often.
他举了一个例子，这个在加拿大不是很普遍的哈，但是对这个在这个刑事犯罪里面有一条是说，宣传这个仇恨的这种反宣传仇恨的这个立法，比如说举一个例子，就是卢旺达他宣传这个种族灭绝，这种是要立法的。有立法来反对的，这个在霍顿郡是很少的。
The other section is the willful promotion of hatred. And that's by communicating statements other than in a private conversation where you promote hatred against an identifiable group. And I spoke a little bit about what an identifiable group means within our current legislation and laws. The interesting thing about this offense is that it's important to note that it has to be in public. And that can be challenging for law enforcement and police, because we have to prove exactly that it wasn't a private conversation, that it was in public, and that it promoted hatred. So, for example, if we're talking about social media, I'll use Facebook to highlight this. Oftentimes with Facebook, you have to invite somebody in as a friend, for lack of a better term. So if there's communication going on amongst your friends where you're invited in, it may not actually meet the threshold of public, as opposed to maybe Twitter, where your account's public and you can spread hateful messages and it can be public. So that's the challenge with this offense, but it's important to know that we have this, where you cannot spread hate, cannot promote hatred against identifiable group, as long as it's in a public place.
好，另外一个就是这个定罪的标准呢，就是如果你推广这个充满仇恨的这种宣传哈，刚才说第一个说的是说种族灭绝的宣传，第二个呢，他说是故意的推广这个仇恨，但是这个呢是比较很难定罪的。他说必须是发生在公共场合的才可以定罪。如果是两个人之间私底下的这种说某种原因仇恨这样的，是很难被定罪的。比如说脸书上有几个，就是这种社交媒体上，就是私人的那些个谈话就很难被定罪。但是如果他像推特这样的东西，他公众的发出去了，说他要怎么样的有意识的推广这个犯罪，那么就是可以定罪的。私人之间是很难定罪的。
The other the offense that falls kind of under this willful promotion of hatred, and it's quite new actually. It was just the first reading within the House was done in February, is the willful promotion of anti-Semitism. And that's by communicating statements, again, other than a private conversation, willfully promotes anti-Semitism by condoning, denying, or downplaying the Holocaust. And this is a relatively new charge. What's interesting about this is it hasn't really been tested within our court system, but I imagine it will be in the near future, unfortunately, which means somebody's actually spreading this type of hatred. But you know, it's a very new charge and something that allows police officers to be able to respond to these things and hold people accountable.
还有他现在讲到了一个最新的，刚刚推出来的这个立法，是反对有意识的宣传对犹太人的憎恨。这个还没有，这是刚刚出来的，对于我们这个社区也还不太适用。
And then one of the last offenses, speaking specifically to hate under the hate propaganda, is the public incitement of hatred. And again, that's communicating statements in public that incites hatred against an identifiable group, where it would likely lead to a breach of the peace. And I'll give you an example of what this might actually look like. So in the summer of 2020, post-murder of George Floyd, we had a lot of peaceful marches take place across the region, specifically related to police interactions with the Black community. If somebody were to show up at one of these marches and start inciting hatred or communicating statements inciting hatred against the Black community, we can all agree that it would most likely lead to a breach of the peace, which means that we as police have to intervene and arrest that person to ensure, again, there's not a breach of the peace and there's not a risk to public safety for the person who's inciting the hatred. And I understand that, you know, probably the least of our concerns, but just the impact on everybody else. But that's important to know that this is an offense within that hate propaganda legislation.
他还说一个另外一个可以治罪的一条，就是说，如果在公共场合宣传对这个某一个团体或者某一个族裔的这个仇恨，影响到了这个公众的和平。他举了一个例子，比如说2020年的时候，美国不是有一个非常严重的事件，就是一个黑人被一个白人警察那个用膝盖给压死了哈。然后呢， 就是全世界，就是北美各地都有很多黑人团体在游行，就包括在霍顿郡也有黑人团体在游行，这个是可以的。但是如果有人对这个游行就开始有这些个对这一个团体开始有一些个充满仇恨的，在公众场合影响到大家的这个安全和和平的，开始对这个团体有攻击，那么警察就可以介入了，因为他们影响到了公众的和平。
And then one of the last sections is mischief to religious property, and that's someone who commits mischief, damage to property, religious property, and it has to be motivated by hate, bias, or prejudice. And that could be graffiti at a place of worship. That could be somebody that would destroy a holy book or any other type of religious symbol.
另外一条可以治罪的呢，就是这个破坏他人的财物罪哈，就是有的人会有偏见或者仇恨，会损坏比如说教会的东西，或者在教会的墙上涂鸦，这些都是可以治罪的。
Something that I just want to touch on really quickly is the sentencing section within our criminal code as it relates to hate. And this is important because a court can impose a sentence that's higher or more severe for individuals if it's proven or there's evidence that the offense was motivated by bias, prejudice, or hate. And it's interesting to note that the element of hate when it comes to a criminal offense is almost irrelevant prior to sentencing. And what I mean by that is you have to prove, the court has to prove that the actual offense has taken place. And the fact that it's motivated by hate or bias is only an aggravating factor come sentencing. So the actual offense has to stand alone. And then if convicted, the court can impose a higher sentence, or a higher sentence, a more severe sentence, if it's proven that it's motivated in whole or in part by hate.
他说，在这个司法系统哈，如何执行这个呢？就是第一件事是定罪。如果定罪了，这个事情是一个犯罪行为，那么在他宣判的时候、判罪的时候，如果是有种族歧视或者仇恨引起的，那么呢，这个判罪会重判。但是在第一步的时候，不是他特别重要，他得首先认定这个事情是一个犯罪事件。那么是不是犯罪事件，种族不是一个很重要的元素。但是一旦认定这个事件是一个犯罪事件，但是如何判罚的时候，如果这个事情是由于种族歧视、仇恨造成的，就会重判。
Great. So that's kind of hopefully gave everybody an understanding of what a hate crime is and what some of our hate crime legislation looks like. I'll move on to, what is a hate or bias motivated incident? And
Sorry.
Do you want to jump in there and then I can explain?
I can't remember that much.
Okay, I apologize. Yes, go ahead.
他说他刚才说到了呢，就是说，什么时候警察？刚才讲到了，给大家讲的就是说，什么时候警察会介入的？是什么样的时候才是由于仇恨引起的犯罪行为？他下面呢举几个例子。Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, sorry about that. So this is really any incident that's motivated by hate or bias, and it can include name calling, racial insults, discriminatory speech. However, it does not meet the threshold of a criminal offense. So that would be considered a hate or bias motivated incident.
OK， 他说哈，现在有一个非常的那个定义哈，刚才讲的是什么就可以进入审判的那种犯罪，还是说就是一个事件？他举了一些事件，比如说管这个人叫不好的名字起外号，或者是由于你的族裔的给你侮辱你，还是说一些个侮辱性质的话，还是说分发一些个有侮辱语言的文字材料，这些 都只能说是仇恨事件，而不是仇恨犯罪，就是不可以进入那个判罪系统的。但是呢，这是最常见的，就是仇恨事件。So bias motivated incidents are more common than hate crime. Is that what?
Yeah, they are often more common. For something to meet the actual definition of a hate crime. Yes. However, historically, yes, that's the case. What I can tell you that in 2022, last year, we actually saw more reported hate crimes than hate incidents.
OK， 他说这种就是有一个是仇恨事件还是仇恨犯罪，这仇恨事件一般是比较轻的，这比较常见的。但是非常不幸的是，2022年仇恨犯罪也开始上升了。
And okay, so some of the things that we look at to determine if in fact it's motivated by hate, comments or statements made during the incident, motivation of the suspect or lack of motivation. The victim's perception is really important. The display of offensive symbols or words, and a perfect example again, and not to offend anyone, is a swastika. Circumstances surrounding the incident, groups involved in the attack, the manner and means of the attack. Is it, somebody, maybe a female was assaulted, or is it a Muslim female who was assaulted and had her hijab or headdress ripped off, right? And recurring patterns as well are things that we look at.
警察如何界定这个歧视事件呢？比如说，在这个事件发生过程中，是不是有人说了一些歧视的话？这个事件的发生是不是有这个歧视的那个原因在里面？另外是受害者是如何看待这个事情的？还比如说这个时间是不是某个种族族裔的节日啊，或者时间啊？还有是不是受到侵害的是什么样的团体，以及那个方式，还是它的那个重复发生的这个规律 ？Yeah.
Okay. So a simple way to look at, and I'm a visual person, as some may be on this call, but a simple way to look at the difference between a hate crime and a hate incident is a criminal offense plus hate is a hate crime. A criminal offense without hate is just a criminal offense. And I don't mean to say just, because I'm not trying to undermine it or minimize it, sorry. Hate without a criminal offense is just a hate or bias incident. So I'm going to leave that up. It may require some translation, but I'll leave it up so people can look at it and just have an understanding of the difference between a hate crime, a criminal offense, and a hate or bias incident.
好，他现在呢，就是给我们画了一个图，这样大家就理解什么是仇恨事件，还是仇恨犯罪。仇恨犯罪是要判刑的。这个第一行哈，黑色的是有一个犯罪行为，加红的是说仇恨，就是既有犯罪行为，又有仇恨的元素在里面。犯罪行为就是可以入那个判刑的那种犯罪行为，那么呢，就等于就可以说这是一个仇恨犯罪，是要判刑的。如果第二行黑色的只有一个犯罪事件，但是呢里边没有红色的，没有这个种族的没有这个仇恨的因素，那么它就是一个普通的犯罪事件哈。第三个呢，就是它是从什么开始的呢？是从种族仇恨开始的，但是呢，它又没有那么严格到可以入判刑那一级的犯罪行为。那么就是这个白色的，是我们今天谈论的，就是由于偏见造成的这种仇恨事件。Okay, now we understand the differences between hate crime and hate incidents. It's very helpful.
Great. So I want to speak a little bit about online hate crimes because we're seeing an increasing trend of these things. And I think, definitely with the COVID pandemic, everybody went online and it provided just an opportunity for people to spread hate. And it's becoming more common and it's easier for people to share information in an online platform who otherwise might not be connected.
那么他现在先讲一下，就是现在有网上的仇恨犯罪，有网上传播的这个仇恨犯罪。
Yeah. And the challenge too for law enforcement, it makes it tough for us is because, you can spread online hate from anywhere in the world. So we often find that, hate incidents or hate speech take place, impacting those within our local community. But the individual that might be actually spreading this hate could live all across the world. We all know that the online platforms make it easier to connect, and it makes it challenging for us as law enforcement to actually investigate these things. So we're seeing an alarming increased trend of online hate crimes and hate speech and hate incidents, and it's really challenging for us to respond to because technology is often changing, social media platforms and otherwise.
说现在呢，就是这个社交媒体还有这个网上哈，这种仇恨犯罪是很难处理的。就是说，由于有了网上，所以可能这个事件呢传播在我们这个当地的社区，受到了影响。可是这个最终的这个源头呢，却在世界的另外一头。所以现在看到的就是越来越多的这种网上的种族歧视犯罪，可是却没有办法追踪到它的这个源头。对于这个执法者，对于警察，对于这些执法者来说，很难抓到这个事件的那个源头。如果他离你千万里之外。
Right. And I mean, you look at some of these, you look at some of these things, and these are online platforms that are just opportunities for people to spread hate. And they're always changing, they're always being updated. We're seeing new online platforms all the time, which aggravates the challenge for law enforcement for sure.
他举了一些例子啊，这些社交软件儿，这些比如说 Twitter 啊、YouTube 啊这些东西，Instagram 啊、Facebook 越来越多，越来越多，抓都抓不尽。我相信对于我们华人社区，我们还可以加上一个微信，就是有很多这种社交软件儿都是有这个种族宣传这个种族歧视、种族犯罪的。
So one thing that my office does, and myself and my office has the oversight for our police services response to hate incidents, is we really look at global events and the impact that they have locally. Maybe I'll let you translate that and then explain a little bit what that looks like.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. 那对于这个Ryan Smith 警长的办公室呢，他们就会他们主要是负责这种由于仇恨由于种族歧视造成的这种仇恨，但是这种事情呢，往往都是有一个源头，就是一个很大的全球性的事件，但是却在我们比较当地的一个社区里造成了危害。
Yeah, so I spoke a little bit at the onset of the presentation about how these types of incidents are challenging because it impacts communities, and what happens, halfway across the world has an impact here. And some examples of that are, the COVID-19 pandemic, which has had an impact on an increase in anti-Asian hate. Terrorist attacks, which we've seen across the world, which have an impact on those in our communities. Other hate-motivated incidents, and when I say that, I mean, the mosque shooting in Christchurch, New Zealand, the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting, political unrest within the US and India. And when I speak about political unrest, I'm talking about, world leaders who are aggravating this narrative or pushing these dangerous narratives forward, specifically related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, I spoke a little bit about that online increasing trend as well.
举一个例子哈，他说的就是说一个很大的国际性事件发生了，源头是这个，但是对我们当地的居民社区却有很大的影响。比如说这个新冠病毒 COVID 是全球性的灾难，可是呢，却对当地人来说呢，却对亚裔产生了很大的影响，很多针对亚裔这个族裔的这个仇恨事件。再比如说，这个恐怖袭击，某一个地方发生了恐怖袭击，但是呢，另外一个地方的族裔却受到了歧视。还有比如说对这个宗教，比如说这个有很多那个穆斯林的教会受到了袭击哈。他说这个很多国际的一些个政治的某个国家、某些国家的领导人也都在宣传，说一些这些个与这个仇恨有关的话。他在世界的另一头说这些话，可是在我们当地的社区里就会有连锁反应。
And here's an example, and it's not meant to alarm anybody, but 2020, 2021, the city of Vancouver saw almost a 900% increase in anti-Asian hate crimes or reported anti-Asian hate crimes. And a lot of that was driven by some narratives and misinformation and really dangerous rhetoric targeting the Asian community as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And what I said earlier was, unfortunately, we had world leaders just south of our borders who were spreading these dangerous messages that resulted in an increase of hate crimes and hate incidents targeting the Asian community. And this is an example of, how global events, without question, have a localized impact here.
他举了一个例子哈，就是2021、2020、2022年，就自从新冠病毒这个全球危机发生以后呢，温哥华警局就报告，他们反对这个亚裔的仇恨事件上升了878%。所以这就是，尤其是很多政府的领导人也在宣传说一些与事实不符的话。比如说，美国领导人就有某些领导人就在说与事实不符的话，说这个新冠病毒是中国病毒，是从中国开始的，等等这些话。所以这个事件的源头并不在温哥华，可是温哥华的反亚裔事件却上升了900%，就是上升了9倍。
Great. So I want to talk a little bit about the collection of data and why it's so important for us as a police service. Maybe I'll flip that to
Yeah,
you.
thank you. 他现在说一下这个霍顿警局是如何收集资料的，以及收集到的资料对这个仇恨事件的影响。
Yeah, so we collect data on hate crimes, hate motivated incidents, or suspected hate crimes. And those are things that, we believe may be motivated by hate, but we don't have enough evidence to definitively say that.
他说，比如说他们收集一些资料，他们认为这是由于种族歧视、种族仇恨造成的事件，可是他们却没有足够的证据来证明。
And it really allows us to take a strategic approach to addressing trends that we see. So when we see an increase in reported hate incidents targeting a specific community, or we see an overall increase, what it tells us is that we need to respond to that. And I'll give you an example of what that looks like for our police service. So in 2020, we saw a significant increase in reported hate incidents impacting youth or those involved in school activities. So we partnered to develop a new campaign called No Hate in Halton, geared towards school-aged youth in our region. And in partnership with 180 learning facilities, we were able to develop this awareness campaign, and spread the message of anti-hate. So that's an example of how we take stats that we collect and then respond to them.
他举了个例子哈，就是这些资料的收集对他们对这个趋势的预估以及应变是非常有用的。他举了一个例子，比如说2020年，他就发现这个学校里边这个青少年犯罪事件有很多这个针对青少年的这个仇恨事件，所以呢，根据这个数据，他们就在霍顿郡开始了一个No Hate in Halton 哈，在霍顿郡不允许 hate 的这么一个活动，在跟180个教育机构、学校联手，就是针对这个事情制定了一个计划来应对这个趋势，结果这个事情呢就及时的受到了控制。
Right. So I'll speak a little bit about if you or others become victims of hate crime, what can you do? And we really like to come out and provide this presentation because we can't be everywhere at all times, and we know that. And it's important that those within the community are empowered to support victims who may be impacted by hate.
他说呢，他非常高兴，红衣文化协会请他来到社区做这个讲座，因为他在警局是负责这方面工作的啊，他们也不可能随时随地的在各个社区里，所以他愿意给我们社区的这些个人讲如何当这个仇恨犯罪和仇恨事件发生的时候，我们应该如何应对。
The most important thing that I tell people is that you need to report it to police, or you need to help somebody who's victimized to report it to police. And this is important so we can stop the cycle of hate. And we can discuss, and there may be a debate, whether we're the best mechanism to support those after they've been a victim of hate. But what I can tell you is that we're the only stakeholder within the community who can actually arrest people and lay criminal charges. So it's very important that you report it to police. I'll speak a little bit later about some of the things that we do to support victims. But again, we're one of the only, well, we are the only, mechanism to arrest people, charge them, hold them accountable, document them, and really respond to these things.
好，第一个呢，他就是说，第一件事儿也是最重要的一件事儿，如果你遇到了仇恨事件，第一件，或者是你看到了别人正在是仇恨事件的受害者，你要帮助，一定要打911，一定要报警。为什么呢？因为警察是唯一的一个执法机构能够抓人，只有他们才能够把这个犯罪的人抓起来，进入这个法律惩罚程序。所以打911报警是非常重要的。有了这些个报告，他们才能够采取行动。
Great. So, important information for those that may be, a victim of a hate crime is, to call 911 or a non-emergency line. Obviously, if there's an act in progress, we want you to call 911. It's an emergency. Or if it's happened in the past and you're in a place of safety, call our non-emergency line there. It's important that you document any damage or any evidence that may be important for us to have as we show up to respond to these things. And as well as when you're on the phone with communications, it's important to provide clear and detailed information. And I know that can be challenging, especially if you've just been victimized by an act of hate. But it's important to try to explain why you feel as though the incident that has targeted you or the crime that has targeted you is motivated by hate.
好，他说呢，如果你遇到了仇恨犯罪或者是仇恨事件的时候，你打911；如果是正在发生而且非常紧急的呢，你就打911；如果是不太紧急的呢，你就打这个警局的这个电话哈。重要的是你一定要保留住证据，你是照下相来还是记下来还是怎么样，一定要保留下证据。 第三个就是当你打这个911或者是打这个警局报警的时候呢，你要给一些详细的信息，以及你认为它是由于你的这个偏见，由于对你或者是你这个族裔有偏见而引起的事件，这些个细节你都要记下来啊，报警的时候，然后报告给警局。
So our response to hate, we take a kind of a three-pronged approach, and I'm going to explain each one of those, and then maybe each time I'll have you translate so it's not too lengthy, because I think there's been a couple times, unfortunately, where I've had you translate really long. But the first one is investigatively, and that's very simple. That's police responding to an act of hate, investigating it, collecting evidence, trying to determine who's responsible, and then, if appropriate, lay charges or verbal cautions or otherwise.
Yes, thank you for breaking it. I have my little notebook. 那如果有人报警了以后呢，那么警局会如何应对呢？它有3层哈。第一个呢，警局就会调查这个事件，他会调查，会取证，如果必要的话，他们会去抓人，然后定罪。所以这个报告是非常重要的，给所有的这个你的信息以及这个事件的信息也是非常重要的，他们才会去调查这个事件。
The other, piece of our response is from an intelligence standpoint is, again, monitoring those global events, seeing what's happening in jurisdictions or towns or cities otherwise, or outside of Halton, sorry. And just monitoring trends to make sure that we're well aware of them and we're on top of those things and that we can effectively respond.
第二层呢，他们也会积极的应对这些。刚才说到了很多当地发生的事件都是有源头的，所以他们会利用他们的情报机制哈，来监视这个整个霍顿郡以及霍顿郡以外世界在发生什么，以及对当地社区的影响，以及意见，就是他会预见大概这个事情可能会变成一个问题，会比较提前应对。
And then lastly, community outreach and education. And that's what we're doing tonight. We're meeting with community members, stakeholders, organizations to ensure that they're well aware of what is and what is not a hate crime, our police services response, and what individuals can do to support those within their communities. And that's really important, again, because, responding to hate is not solely a police issue. It's everybody's issue and a responsibility that we should all work towards eliminating.
第三层呢，就是社区哈，他说，就比如说今天我们请他来社区做讲座，到社区去是非常非常重要的，因为不是每个人都知道，当发生了这个仇恨犯罪或者仇恨事件的时候，社区的人不知道该如何应对，所以警察就在社区里做这些讲座，告诉我们大家，当这个事情发生的时候，我们应该如何应对。另外呢，警察的角色在整个这个事件中，警察的角色以及社区自己人的这个角色是怎样的？如果你觉着你经历了由于对你的种族或者对你这个族裔或者是对你的这个背景造成由这个引起的犯罪事件，一定要告诉警察，你觉得是由于你的族裔造成的。因为如果你没有很详细的叙述，另外你也不告诉他们你觉得就是从这个受害人的角度提到你的感觉，他们也是很难定罪的。
And, when we talk about education and outreach, I spoke a little bit about our No Hate in Halton campaign, which was already explained, but we're often doing other types of campaigns through our social media messaging and or otherwise. Again, spreading the message of anti-hate, explaining to people, what supports are out there for those that are impacted, and then what is our overall police response, again, being one of our top priorities.
这个警察局呢，也是经常会发，也是在社区里经常会发一些个材料啊，组织一些活动啊，来宣传。就是说，当有人经历了由于种族歧视造成的犯罪或者是仇恨事件的时候，你不是孤独的，你不是无助的，你是可以求助的。那么最好的办法呢，就是向警察求助。这样的话，你才知道，这样的话，他们才能够收到这些个信息，才能够去阻止这个事情进一步的恶化。
And then I'm going to speak a little bit about what resources are available to those individuals or communities that are impacted by hate.
现在讲一下，就是有什么对这些个已经遭受过这个种族歧视事件或者是偏见事件，这种社区，他们有什么帮助？
So, through our police service, there's a couple, couple resources that are available. First is within our policy or our response to hate, we developed a victim support protocol. What that looks like is that myself or my designate, someone from my office, will reach out to every individual impacted by hate in the region and offer them supports, answer questions they may have, or make a referral to our victim services unit.
OK，他说呢，这些个是社区资源哈。第一个就是他是负责这个办公室的，或者是当这个仇恨事件发生的时候，他本人或者是他的下属会联系到每一个受害人，提供帮助，并且呢告诉他们可以还有一些个其他的组织可以帮助这些受害人。
Obviously, ongoing support through my office, and again, education and outreach, making ourselves available to members of the public and community to answer questions they may have, provide support as needed, or otherwise.
他的这个部门以及他的下属呢，还会做一些这些社区讲座，让大家知道，如果你成为了就是种族犯罪或者是种族事件的这个受害人，你是可以受到保护，你是有支持的。
Through the province of Ontario, it's called our VQRP program. Resources are also available to those impacted by hate. That includes emergency shelter if you need to be placed somewhere for your safety, travel-related expenses for court treatments or otherwise, crime scene cleanup if your house has been damaged or there's other type of cleanup required, short-term counseling, and obviously support for serious injuries. And that's those that are impacted by actual hate crimes. That funding is made available through our victim services unit within the home, please.
他说这个后顿警局呢有一个专门的资金是帮助这些个受害者的。如果你曾经经历了这个种族犯罪或者种族事件受到了伤害，他们会帮助你。也比如说你如果需要一个临时的居所，为了保证安全，他会提供临时的居所。比如说你要出庭，或者是你要去有一些个费用，他会报销这些个费用。比如说你受这个犯罪现场的这个清理工作，他们也会帮助做这个清理工作。如果你受到了心理伤害，他们会有短期的提供心理咨询。如果你受到了身体上有巨大的受了伤，他们也会提供帮助。
And again, lastly, really important, how can you support others that are impacted? I said it earlier, it's important that you help someone contact the police, right? That could be someone who's not comfortable contacting the police, or that could be someone who maybe there's a language barrier.
他说他刚才讲到了，第一个指的是说，如果本人经历了这个仇恨事件或者仇恨犯罪，当然呢，他也说，就是如果你看到了别人正在经历一个犯罪事件或者是犯罪仇恨，那么呢，你也有义务帮助他打电话给警局报警。 你要帮助，也会帮助这个受害人到一个安全的地方等待警察的到来。如果这个人已经受到了很大的伤害你要帮助他记下这些个信息，比如时间呀、人呐这些个信息你要帮助这个受害人记下这些信息。如果是对这个物业有伤害的话，你也要有义务帮助这个受害人清理或者是记下这些个信息，然后报警。
Provide a safe place for somebody to stay while they're waiting for the police. Help them record information regarding the incident. Maybe they don't have a smartphone that can take pictures. Take those pictures, record that. It's very important for us. And if there's damage to property, assist with, again, the documentation and cleanup and repair. And really, lastly, just be a support for that individual.
他就是刚才提到了报警是一方面，另外提供这些证据也是非常重要的。所以他就说，如果一个人受到了伤害，他又没有，比如他也没有个手机，他也没有一个可以照相的那种smartphone你就帮助他照下来，或者是帮助他取一些证，帮助他到一个安全的地方等待警察，这些都是非常重要的。就是看到了一个受伤害的人，我们不可以就扭脸走开的，也是尽自己可能帮助一下。
Great, thanks. So, that's really quickly. I think I've been speaking for almost an hour now, but I really wanted to open up for questions that anybody has, because I think there's important dialogue to be had, and there's opportunities for us to hear how maybe we can do a better job as a police service, or just answer any question you have in regards to our response to overall hate crimes. So what I'll do is I'll probably stop sharing the screen if that works, and we can open it up to the floor.
刚才这个 Ryan 警长我忘了一句，他还说，就是说遇到这种犯罪行为、种族犯罪行为或者事件正在发生的时候，那个受害人呢，可能是不说英语的，就是有语言障碍的，所以尤其重要，就是如果看到比如一个老人受到了伤害，尤其重要，我们是有义务要帮助他们的，要帮助他们翻译，帮助照相，帮助取证，帮助报警，这个是非常重要的。好，现在就大家有什么问题就可以打开话筒，你就可以问问题，问问题可以是汉语的，我就替你翻译一下
So I actually I put in the group chat my phone number so anyone can reach me, or also my email as well, because I just realized I took that screen down and it had my had my contact information.
那个 Ryan 警长留下了他的电话号码，他办公室的电话号码和他的 email， 大家有问题也可以直接找他的，也可以找红叶协会，我们会帮你联络如果你觉得尤其是我们今天有很多的老人，你不说英语如果你需要帮助，也可以找协会，可以帮助你翻译什么。Yeah, we realize we have 38 people today, which is not bad. And a lot of them are seniors. So I was telling them that because they have transportation and language barriers, so if they need help or report, they need support, they could contact the Red Leaf, and we will be that supportive person to contact you or the police. There's a question. Oh, there are many questions coming. First one is in Chinese, if crime or incidents happened, we dial 911, but we do not speak English. Do they have Chinese? Do they have Mandarin support?
Yeah, so we do. We have the ability to translate many of the most common languages in the region. So regardless of the language you speak or any barriers that may exist as a result of the language that you speak, we're able to provide policing services and a response for you.
他说语言有中文的，霍顿警局还911有好像是100多种语言，但是就是说你不要因为你怕人家不说你的语言，你就不去报警了。就是遇到这种事件，一定是要报警的，然后会有说中文的人帮助你。
I heard So if someone doesn't speak any English, so when they call in, so they get say something, right? And they just keep saying like a Chinese. So that will reach someone through the Chinese interpretation, or how that works. I guess that's someone, how the operator identify what kind of language service they need.
Yeah, so there's got to be a little bit of communication. Obviously, within the English language, someone would most likely ask, what language do you speak, so that we can connect you. So there's got to be a way to have that, communication. And if you're having a hard time communicating with someone, then just say the language that you speak, and they'll be able to then connect you to who you need to be connected to.
他就是说，刚才那个丽丽提到了，这个让警长也提到，就是说，有的老人什么英语都不会说，所以遇到这种事件时打911，你就用中文，你就不断的说就好了，他就会有人，能够觉察到你说的是什么。当然，你会说一点英语是最好的，比如说 Chinese 啊，说这个中文呐。如果是什么都不会，你就用汉语说就好了，总会有人能够分辨出来你说的是哪种语言。他们有很多很多种语言的接线员会帮到你的。Ryan, I have a question. Statistically, do you have incidents, bias-motivated incidents against Asian seniors happening in Halton? We're supposed to be a very affluent community and people are polite and nice, but do you have incidents reported?
We do, very few compared to other regions. That being said, I'm mindful that, hate incidents are some of the most underreported, incidents or crimes. Although we have a very strong Asian community within the region, it may look very different than other cities like Vancouver or otherwise across the country. So we don't see the numbers per se. We do have anti-Asian hate reported in our region, but it wouldn't be something that would be alarming or significant.
我刚才问警长一个问题，是替大家问的哈，就是霍顿郡是一个好像比较有秩序、非常岁月静好、非常富裕的一个地区，但是有没有人因为这个，就是尤其是亚裔老人，受到种族歧视造成的这个事件啊，还是犯罪啊？他说有的，也有的，但是不是说像多伦多、温哥华那么可怕的数字，但是霍顿郡也是有的。有一个人在问 ，Somebody asked if police report to police and police come to investigate, do they have to pay a fee? Somebody answered, no, no fee.
No fee, no fee. Yeah, no, definitely policing services in this country are free, let alone here in Halton, obviously.
他说有人问，就是报警了以后，警察来处理这些事情，出警要付费吗？他说不用的，所有的加拿大警察出警都是不用收费的。
Yeah.
Sorry, I have one question. Thank you so much, Ryan, for your speech.
Yeah.
The day before, I drove my my daughter to downtown, and somehow maybe my head beam was off. Finally, I figured out one Jeep followed me like 2 kilometers. He just stopped and wait for me, and then I saw him just wait for me. So I feel very scary. And when the right, because it's in highway, so I didn't stop. So just in the right line, and he stopped, and then he let me to roll my window off. But I didn't do that because I feel scary. So in this situation, I asked my friends later on. My friend said it's a kind of road rage. But some friends said maybe he just want to remind me to, it's a little bit dangerous because my somehow my beam was off. In this situation, I need to call 911 because if I roll the window, if he had gun, I just thinking. So
Yeah, that's a great question. And to your friend's point, it could have been both things. They could have been upset and there was some type of road rage incident, or they could just be wanting to tell you that your high beams were off and or on. But what I would tell you is that if you're ever, actually what I would tell everybody is that if you're ever in a situation where you feel like, you know, your safety's in jeopardy or others' safety is in jeopardy, then I would suggest that you call 911 so we can respond to that, right? Because the last thing we want to happen is that you to wait for something bad to happen before even calling us when it could be avoided. So if you feel as though your safety's in jeopardy and you need a police response right away, then definitely call 911.
So in that situation, I need to stop, or I need to drive to. Some people recommend me to drive some like shopping mall. Some people, maybe more people there, maybe safe, because if I drive directly to my house, for example, he follow up, it's more dangerous, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, getting into a well-populated area is probably not a bad idea. Definitely, if you're feeling like there's some concern for your safety, for sure.
oh, okay, thank you so much.
There's a question in chat, Ryan. It's that we have a lot of grandparents, seniors in today's session. So they're saying if we play with bring our kids to the park and play in the playground, grandchildren, and some youth started using racial slurs or discriminatory words, can we take a picture and document their behavior? Is that an intrusion of children's portraits? Like if we take pictures of these kids, is that a violation of their privacy?
So the short answer is no. As long as somebody's in a public place, you can record anybody who you want. What I would probably tell you is that, you know, you need to balance whether that's actually going to aggravate the issue and put you actually in harm's way if you're going to record somebody. So that's the balancing act. You can record whoever you'd like in a public place, but again, you know, people don't like that and they may become more aggressive or assaultive and or otherwise, right?
回答这个问题哈，他就是说，如果是在这个户外带着孩子们玩，在公园里有人开始就是种族歧视的这种语言或者是辱骂哈，可不可以照相？可不可以录下来？这些人，是不是有侵犯这个肖像权？他这个警察的回答是说，如果是在一个公众场合，谁都没有肖像权，你可以录下来，但是呢，就是你要斟酌一下，是不是会很危险啊？会不会刺激那些人有更剧烈的举动啊？ So then how do we document? So for if this happens, we don't aggravate. We don't want to aggravate the people, but we also want to keep some documentation. What is your recommendation to keep evidence without endanger ourselves?
I mean, really the only way to do that is recording something on your phone or other recording device. You know, that's the best way to document that evidence. But again, the balancing act is whether it's going to aggravate things. So I think that, you know, the situations are so different and they can be ever changing, but the important piece is that you're going to have to gauge whether it's going to put you in more harm's way or not, right?
那么我就替这个长者继续问了一下，我说刚才说的，如果报警尽量提供这些个资料哈，可是如果你录像或者是照相或者是什么，又可能让对方更加那个危险，这样就怎么办呢？有没有更好的办法呢？他说也没有什么更好的办法，最好的办法也是就是录像或者是照片，但是你要做一个判断，如果是非常危险或者是会让对方更加的危险，那么还是安全第一哈，这是这个。然后还有一个人问 another question in okay, how do we give such information to the police? So how do we give our evidence to the police?
Well, you would have to first contact us through our communications, that non-emergency line I put up there, or 911. An officer would respond and take a report from you, and that's when you would give them that information.
他说刚才就是说，如果是特别危险的，你就直接打911啊，警察就会来。如果是不是那么危险的，你可以等一等。那么你又有这个手机上或者什么又记下了这些个信息，那你就可以去报告。然后警察来了以后，警察会来找你，那么你再把这些个信息给这个警察。
I had a case in the past during the COVID. It's happened under just COVID start. I believe it's early spring that year. So I was hiking in the trail, and I was talking with my sister in Chinese on the phone with speaker on. And suddenly there is 3 young guy, probably around 20, 22 or something around that age, approach me on the opposite way and starting to yell and say the F word. So at the beginning, I didn't realize it's for me because I look around, it's only me around, right? So I realized, I realized quickly that's a hate crime, like because of COVID, right? Like the officer mentioned, it happened start at the time. So I called the number. So I don't think they find that guy because their trail have a lot of exit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't do any pictures, video because it happens very, very quick, and they have bike run away very quick. So I'm just curious if we're able to catch them or something, because I don't have evidence, right? So I don't have video, picture, anything, and it's very hard to, I don't know. What's the scenario? Like, what's worse scenario for them? What's gonna be happen for them if I don't have any evidence or something?
Well, I mean, we would come and investigate that, right? And there's other ways to obtain evidence, whether it's through video, through other witnesses. And I get that there was nobody there, but there's other ways for us to do that. Again, what would happen? It depends on, if a criminal offense was committed or not, and that'd be something that we would learn or glean from the actual investigation. So it's a tough question because there's different outcomes for sure, but I would tell you that we investigate it and we hold people accountable if we're able to do so.
Yeah, that's because it happened for my friend as well. She is my neighborhood. She's went to the mall, drive her pickup, and on the parking lot, suddenly she didn't do anything, just on the parking lot driving slowly or something, find the parking lot. There's a guy yelling to her, F word, F Chinese or something. I think that's the time starting COVID as well. So it's a very, very, I mean, that's what I heard during the time. So it's a lot of case, I would say.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure.
Some people say, can we translate these questions and answers? So 刚才这个问题呢，大家就说英文的哈，就想翻译一下。刚才这个朋友就说，这个 COVID 新冠病毒刚刚开始的时候，他去外面散步，在小径里面散步，他就是有人说用中文打电话说话。然后就有3个那个小青年儿，就开始用英语骂这个中国人哈，什么什么的，但是他也没有照相，那些人就跑了，啊，这是就是如果这种情况报警，他又没有收到什么证据，这个也怎么办？警察说他们会通过别的方法看看有没有别的证据啊，这是一个哈。另外，刚才有个朋友说，就是他在高速公路上开车。他的那个灯没有打开，后来就有人跟着他，在高速公路上跟着他，一直把他跟到下边来，然后过来敲他的窗户，他就没有敢开窗户。也许是那个人是路怒， 也许是提醒他没开灯，但这种情况是不是应该开窗户？警察说，如果你已经感觉到不安全了，就是你的直觉已经感觉到不安全了，你最好还是就是不要做不安全的事情，就不用开窗户。有的人说就是比如说就接着开到一个比较那个就是商场啊或者什么的停车场啊，不要直接回家呀什么，怕这个人接着跟着回家。反正就是说，如果你的直觉已经告诉你这个不太安全了，你就不要再往那个不太安全的方向走。Yeah, sorry, yeah, I just translated the two questions. Yeah.
For sure. Great. Thank you.
还有别的问题吗？ It seems we're
The questions, but
yeah.
I know we're getting
Okay.
close to the end here. So
那我就用中文说吧啊，就是说刚才那一位男士他问的这种问题，我觉得也是有代表性的啊。那他这个可能不构成那个犯罪，对吧？但是它是 incident。那作为警局的话，他们像这种情况，他是鼓励大家去报告他们来 report 呢，还是他们的态度是怎么样的？
Okay, so here's a question. It relates to the last question. It
Yep.
happens to our seniors a lot too. It is racial slurs
Yep.
or discriminatory comments. So they're not hate crime, but they're hate bias incidents. Does police encourage we report incidents, not crime, but do you encourage we report incidents as well? So for your forecasting and trending?
yeah, so you're right. The use of a racial slur on its own does not constitute a criminal offense. Our police services response to both hate crimes and hate incidents are actually the exact same. And it's really important that we do respond to both those things, because somebody committing hate incidents, it may eventually lead to a hate crime. And we need that information. And as we see recurring patterns and or otherwise, again, it drives our service delivery, and it drives our response to those that may actually be doing this. So it's extremely important, regardless of whether you believe it to constitute a criminal offense and or not, to contact us right away.
他是说哈，对于社区人来说呢，是种族犯罪还是种族事件，这个在这个阶段是不重要的。重要的是，如果有人比如说辱骂华裔，或者是用一些个歧视的方法对待你，最重要的是你要报警。报警的话，他们会把这些资料收集起来。如果这个人不及时受到惩罚或者阻止的话，对于警察来说，不管是事件还是犯罪，他们都可以介入了。就是如果这个人不能够及时受到阻止的话，一个事件可能就会严重的发展成了犯罪。另外呢，对于他们统计这些资料，他们会预警，会分析这个趋势，可能这些个辱骂华人的事件多了，可能这个趋势就是不太好的，所以他们就会提早介入，采取行动，就不要让事件都变成了犯罪。
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question. 那就是说这个种族歧视的这个情况，就像他说的，在疫情初期的时候，在学校里面对学生们发生的也比较多哈。那就是在学校里面，因为种族来受到欺凌的这些孩子们，他们是不是可以报警，或者是在学校和这个警方这个之间出现这样的问题的话，他们通常是怎么样处理的？
In the beginning of the pandemic, as you said, global impacts local communities. So when the COVID started, in your data, do you have a lot of racial or bias motivated incidents in schools against Asian youth? And if this incidents happened in an institutional setting in schools, what is the first what is the best way to report directly to the police or report to school and then report to police?
Yeah, so we did see a slight increase in reported hate incidents targeting the Asian community here. Again, yes, we have an Asian community here, not as, large or dense as in other cities across the country. So it wasn't a very significant spike like Vancouver. In terms of the anti-Asian hate that we saw in some of the schools, again, you know, we've really empowered the schools and educated them on these things to ensure that they can handle situations like that at a local level if it maybe doesn't require the police. If it's a hate incident or a hate crime, definitely a hate crime, they're contacting us. The school's contacting us. So regardless of actually who you report to, we're getting involved. You know, if you feel as though the school's maybe not handling it appropriately or there's more work to be done, you can absolutely reach out to us directly as well.
他说就是这个不像多伦多、温哥华那么多的华人哈，霍顿郡没有那么多的华人，但是他也是看到了 COVID 新冠病毒开始以后，对这个华人的歧视事件是在上升的。如果是在学校里发生了，他刚才讲到了，他们这个警局经常去社区哈，他们也会去学校给这个学校做讲座，就是让这个校方知道如何应对事件。但是如果是种族犯罪行为，那第一件事就是要打911，让警方介入，因为犯罪行为都是比较严重的。如果只是事件，那么学校呢，就是在学校这个层面上，他们也已经知道如何应对这些个事件。但是如果事件多了、严重了，或者是在犯罪这个层面上，那是要马上就要报警的。对于学生来说，第一件事还是如果不是特别严重的，但是又是种族歧视事件，是要和学校联络。a lot of grandparents here, a lot of grandparents that live with their grandchildren and families. And还有别的问题吗？大家 ？It seems no more questions. 没有了，没有问题了。Okay, I think we are coming to an end now. 现在大家没有问题了，我们就谢谢警长哈。We thank you very much, Ryan, Sergeant Smith, for making this important presentation for us. We certainly have learned a lot. We not only know that individuals have responsibility to report, we all have responsibility to help other people in need as well. Thank you very much. I have a little poll for the people to do. I will do after you do your closing remarks.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I'll really quickly want to close things off and just thank everybody again for the opportunity to come in and have these conversations. Hopefully this is not the last opportunity I have to spend some time with you, because if you ever want, you know, myself or my team back to speak about anything hate related, crime trends, otherwise, without question, we're here to support. But again, you know, thanks for the opportunity to come in. Thanks for your time, and we definitely look forward to working with you all again.
我们非常感谢Ryan 警长今天给我们做的讲座，也是一天工作哈，他赶紧的回去了，因为现在天不怎么好，所以非常非常感激。他也很珍惜到社区做讲座的这个机会。如果我们大家有什么问题，可以找红叶联络他哈。那大家先不要下线，我先让警长下线。我们有一个问卷哈，让大家那个做一下。OK, Sergeant.Thank you and good night. I'll keep other people for my post. It's in Chinese. Yeah, thank you and see you. 我现在把这个问卷放上来，就3个问题啊，大家回答一下。好，可以看到吗？可以看到了哈。我帮助翻译一下哈。我帮助翻译一下。第一个问题是多项选择。第一个问题。我今天学到了一些对付种族歧视的办法，同意，某种同意，中立，某种不同意，同意。这是第一个问题哈，大家就可以选。第二个问题是，如果遇到了歧视事件，我会采取行动的，同意，某种同意，中立，某种不同意，不同意。第3个问题是说，今天的讲座对你有帮助，同意，某种同意，中立，某种不同意，同意，就是这3个问题哈。第一个是说你学到了一些 对付歧视的应对措施。第二是说遇到了歧视，我会采取行动的，我不会不发声的。第三个是说这个讲座对你有帮助，就是这3个问题哈，大家回答一下哈。
已经提交了，同意，谢谢。
OK，可以看到吗，张磊？
都可以往下
可以
搓。
看见，
可
可以看
以看见哈
见。。
好啊，
哎，
可以看到哈。OK，
现在写的65% participants
哦好的好的那个张磊，你最后 take a screenshot 哈，我这不知道为什么我看不见了哈，就最后也是你 take a screenshot for evaluation。今天也非常感谢大家，今天的天特别不好哈，希望家里人孩子们都回来都是安全的。就是如果我现在今天也学到了一些，就是如果有人欺负我们是要打911，或者是尽量的用手机哈，用手机照下来。就是如果我们是年轻人的话，我不知道今天的有很多人也没有名字。如果说我们是年轻人的话，如果我们看到了一个亚裔的长者，也不会说英语，也不会什么，但是他受到了人的欺负，我们不可以扭脸就走的，我们要帮助帮助他报警，帮助他取证，这样。因为大家都注意了这个事情，我们才能够停止。如果大家都对这个不采取行动的话，认字放流的话，那么也没有人会给警察报告，他们也不知道这些事情在社区中有发生哈。好的，那今天是不是我看那个 post 还在进行吗？那个张磊？
现在已经75%了。
好的，那行，那个就我看到很多问题，大家欢迎这类的讲座哈。好，谢谢，这是非常好。好的，那么今天呢，我们就到这儿哈，大家晚安。
晚安，谢谢。
谢谢
谢谢大家参加，晚安。
好，谢谢。